In the spring of 2003, a research team working off the coast of Western Australia attached a satellite tracking tag to a 9-foot female great white shark. She was healthy, active, and by every biological measure, one of the most formidable predators on the planet. For 4 months, her tag transmitted clean, consistent data, regular dives, normal feeding behavior, the steady rhythm of a great white doing exactly what great whites do. Then, without warning, the signal changed. The depth reading plunged nearly 2,000 feet in a matter of minutes. The temperature surrounding the tag spiked from 46 degrees Fahrenheit to 78, and then the tag went silent, drifting slowly toward the surface before washing ashore on a beach. There was no blood recorded, no struggle, no disturbance in the water. A 9-foot apex predator had simply ceased to exist, and for years, no one could explain why. Scientists do not use the phrase apex predator loosely. It carries a very specific biological meaning. An apex predator is an organism that, as a fully grown adult, has no natural predators of its own. Nothing in its ecosystem actively hunts it. Nothing targets it as prey. It sits at the terminal point of the food chain, the organism that eats and is never eaten. And for as long as marine biologists have studied great white sharks in any serious, rigorous way, the great white held that designation without challenge in the ocean. Nothing in the sea hunted adult great whites. That was not mythology. That was the documented scientific understanding built from decades of research, tagging programs, and direct observation. To understand why the disappearance of that shark was so scientifically significant, you need to understand what was lost. An adult female great white shark can exceed 20 feet in length and weigh more than 4,000 pounds. Those are not estimates. Those are documented, physically measured individuals. Their teeth are serrated along the edges, designed not merely to grip, but to slice. Behind each functional row of teeth sit replacement rows, rotating forward as teeth wear down or break. A great white shark cycles through tens of thousands of teeth across its lifetime and never stops producing more. Their senses are the product of 16 million years of uninterrupted evolutionary refinement. 16 million years. Great white sharks were patrolling these oceans before our genus existed, before most of the megafauna we associate with the prehistoric world had appeared. They survived the extinction event that ended the dinosaurs. They watched entire ecosystems collapse and rebuild. They kept swimming. In that time, evolution gave them the ability to detect the electrical fields produced by the muscle contractions of nearby animals, essentially sensing a heartbeat through the water. They can detect blood at concentrations of 1 part per million, the equivalent of a single drop dissolved across an Olympic swimming pool. They can feel the movements of a struggling animal through pressure-sensitive cells running the length of their body from distances that strain comprehension. Adult great whites have been filmed launching their full body mass, sometimes exceeding 2,000 pounds, completely out of the water in vertical ambush strikes on seals. The breach is over in under a second. For as long as researchers had studied them, nothing in the ocean preyed on animals like this. When the research team retrieved the tag from that Australian beach and downloaded its data, they did not immediately understand what they were looking at. The temperature reading was the piece that demanded explanation. At nearly 2,000 feet beneath the surface, the water temperature in that region of the Pacific Ocean should be close to freezing, far colder than the 46 degrees the tag had been recording near the surface. But the tag was not recording ocean temperature. It was recording the temperature of the environment immediately surrounding it. And that environment, at depth, in the dark, was registering 78 degrees Fahrenheit, warm, sustained, biological. Not the cold of deep water, but the warmth of something alive. The tag had been swallowed, and whatever had swallowed it was running warm in a way that almost nothing in the deep ocean does. This single detail immediately and dramatically narrowed the field of possible explanations. The overwhelming majority of marine life is ectothermic, meaning cold-blooded. Their internal temperature rises and falls with the water around them. A large fish swallowing the tag would register no temperature change. A giant squid, one of the ocean's most powerful invertebrates, would register nothing unusual. Even most shark species, despite their powerful active physiology, are functionally cold-blooded. Whatever consumed that tag was measurably, consistently warm. And it was large enough to have swallowed not just the tag, but the 9-foot shark it was attached to. And it had descended to nearly 2,000 feet and held that depth for an extended period. 3 filters, 3 requirements. Warm-blooded or near warm-blooded. Enormous. Deep diving. The number of animals in the Pacific Ocean capable of satisfying all 3 simultaneously is very, very small. The research team's first and most intuitive candidate was the orca, the killer whale. If you want to understand why that hypothesis formed so quickly, you need to understand one extraordinary documented fact. Orcas are the only known predators on Earth, with a repeatedly observed, scientifically confirmed, peer-reviewed history of successfully hunting adult great white sharks. This is not myth. It is not anecdote. Off the coast of South Africa, marine biologists tracked two male orcas named Port and Starboard, named for the collapsed direction of their dorsal fins. These animals became the subject of intensive study because of what they were doing to the great white population around Gansby, once considered one of the densest great white shark habitats on Earth. Working as a coordinated pair, Port and Starboard developed a hunting method of almost unsettling precision. They would force a great white shark onto its back, triggering a condition called tonic immobility, a temporary paralyzed state that many shark species enter when inverted. Once the shark stopped resisting, the orcas moved in. What they did next stunned researchers who had spent careers studying both species. They did not consume the shark whole. They surgically extracted the liver. The great white shark's liver can account for nearly a third of its body weight and is extraordinarily rich in energy-dense oils and a compound called squalene. The orcas were not eating a meal, they were harvesting a resource. Sharks washed ashore in the days that followed with precise, clean openings near the pectoral region where the liver had been removed. The rest of the body was largely untouched. Scientists noted, with something close to reluctant admiration, the intelligence and learned coordination this behavior demonstrated, and the psychological effect on surviving sharks was immediate and total. Whenever Port and Starboard entered a region, tagged great whites abandoned feeding grounds they had used for years, sometimes vanishing from an area entirely for months. Marine biologists documented the same avoidance patterns in California and other coastal systems where the two species overlap. Great white sharks, the animals the world imagines as unstoppable, are demonstrably and visibly afraid of killer whales. So when the Australian research team turned their attention to what could have consumed their tagged shark, orcas seemed like the obvious answer. They are present in Australian waters. They are warm-blooded, matching the elevated temperature reading. They have a documented history of killing large great whites. The evidence seemed to fit. Until the team looked more carefully, and it began to fall apart. The first problem was the nature of the consumption. Orcas do not swallow great white sharks whole. They extract specific organs and leave the carcass. Yet the data suggested the tag had remained inside its host for an extended period, moving through what appeared to be a digestive process. This implied the shark had been almost entirely consumed, a pattern fundamentally inconsistent with everything researchers knew about orca predation on great whites. The second problem was depth. The tag descended nearly 2,000 feet and held that depth for a sustained period. Orca hunts on great whites occur near the surface, in the shallow coastal zones where coordinated group attacks are possible. A prolonged deep-water descent did not match the profile of any documented orca kill. The third problem was temperature. A killer whale's internal body temperature is close to a human's, somewhere between 97 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The tag recorded 78 degrees, warmer than the surrounding ocean certainly, but far cooler than what researchers would expect inside an orca's digestive system. And the fourth problem was silence. When orcas enter an area, every tagged shark in the region responds immediately. Tagged animals flee. Migration patterns collapse overnight. Entire local ecosystems reorganize around the presence of killer whales. During this event, the nearby tagged sharks continued behaving completely normally. No panic, no evacuation, no behavioral signature of orca presence at all. One by one, the most obvious and satisfying explanation dissolved under scrutiny. And that left the research team confronting a possibility that was, by any fair description, deeply unsettling. Because if it was not an orca, then something else in the deep ocean had consumed a 9-foot great white shark whole. Here is something that most people who know great white sharks casually do not know. They are not fully cold-blooded. Great white sharks, along with mako sharks, salmon sharks, and a small number of other species, possess a specialized circulatory adaptation called a rete mirabile, a dense, interwoven network of blood vessels arranged so that warm blood flowing outward from the muscles passes directly alongside cold blood returning inward from the gills. Heat transfers between these streams. The shark retains its metabolic warmth rather than losing it to the surrounding cold water on every circulatory cycle. Biologists call this regional endothermy, not full warm-bloodedness the way mammals experience it, but the capacity to maintain core body temperature measurably above the water surrounding them. In typical conditions, a great white runs approximately 25 to 27 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than its environment. In active, well-fed individuals, that differential can be larger. Now apply this to the tag data. The ocean where the tracked shark was swimming registered approximately 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Add the expected great white differential of 25 to 27 degrees, and you get an expected internal body temperature of roughly 71 to 73 degrees Fahrenheit. The tag recorded 78 degrees. The difference, 5 to 7 degrees above the calculated baseline, closes almost entirely when you account for individual metabolic variation and the specific physiological state of a large shark that has just made a significant kill and is actively digesting a substantial meal. A large, Energetically active, recently fed great white runs, warmer than its resting baseline. The temperature reading was not merely broadly consistent with being inside the stomach of a great white shark. It was precisely consistent, landing almost exactly where the numbers should fall under those specific conditions. The depth reading fit as well. Great white sharks have been documented diving beyond 3,000 feet, substantially deeper than the descent the tag recorded. That descent represents a large shark moving to deeper, quieter water to process a meal undisturbed, behavior observed across many large predatory species after a significant kill. Unlike orcas, a large shark attacking a smaller one does not extract organs. It consumes prey whole or in large sections with the kind of mechanical force that comes from an animal built entirely around the physics of taking large animals apart quickly. The tag would remain inside the digestive system, traveling with the predator until processing was complete. Every data point aligned, every number fit. The research team reached their conclusion. The 9-foot female great white shark had been consumed by another great white shark, a larger one, considerably larger. Based on the temperature profile, the depth capacity, and the minimum size required to take a 9-foot shark as viable prey, they estimated the predator at approximately 16 to 20 feet in length, potentially weighing between 2,000 and 4,000 pounds. An animal of that scale carries an overwhelming mass advantage over a 9-foot shark. The outcome of any direct encounter between them would be close to predetermined. 16 to 20 feet of great white in full attack mode would have overwhelmed the smaller shark before she had time to process what was happening. The attack would have been fast, complete, and efficient. Nothing left in the water, no extended struggle, no blood trail. Just a small electronic device swallowed along with everything else, recording temperature and depth quietly as it descended into the dark. Cannibalism among sharks is not scientifically new. Sand tiger shark embryos compete and consume each other inside the womb before birth, with only the strongest surviving to term. Large tiger sharks and bull sharks have been documented consuming smaller sharks of multiple species. The behavior exists across the broader elasmobranch family. But documented cannibalism in adult great white sharks, specifically evidenced, data-supported, and peer-reviewed, was new territory. These were the apex predators. These were the animals with nothing above them. The idea that they were hunting each other in deep water, completely beyond any human observation, had not been part of the accepted scientific picture. It is now. What this case revealed is not simply that great whites occasionally eat each other. It revealed something more fundamental about how we construct our understanding of ecosystems. We impose hierarchies because hierarchies are cognitively satisfying. We rank organisms. We draw pyramids. We assign fixed positions. The great white sits at the top. Everything else falls into place below. The ocean does not operate this way. Ocean ecosystems function as dense, contextual, constantly shifting webs of relationships where the same animal occupies completely different positions depending on its size, location, the time of year, and the specific randomness of which animals encounter each other in water that covers 70% of the Earth's surface and reaches depths human technology can barely access. A 9-foot great white is an apex predator in shallow coastal water hunting fur seals. That designation is real and accurate in that context. The same animal, at the wrong depth in the wrong moment, encountering a 20-foot great white is prey. The category does not travel with the animal. It depends entirely on circumstance. The data from one recovered tracking device, roughly the size of a television remote, told us something the ocean had been keeping to itself for longer than our species has existed. Researchers are now deploying expanded tagging programs, building longer data sets and trying to understand how common great white cannibalism actually is, whether it is concentrated in specific regions or seasons, and whether large great whites actively target smaller ones as prey or whether these are purely opportunistic encounters. Those questions do not yet have definitive answers. The answers are coming, one recovered tag at a time. The ocean is not a hierarchy with a fixed winner at the top. It is a contest that never ends, and even the greatest predator in the sea is not, in the end, untouchable.